And we are live.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tasha Sims.
And I'm Marc Caron.
And you're listening to Conscious Living Radio, CFRO 100.5 FM in Vancouver. And then, of course, here we are live on Facebook because the station's still on lockdown. We're not going to get into a conversation on when that's going to change because I'm telling you, I want to get back in the studio. Today, we're talking about sexuality. Valentine's Day is coming up. It seemed like a good time to talk about a sensual approach to igniting a kind of spark inside yourself with a lover, but also with yourself. And I'm pretty passionate about, I know people end up feeling kind of lousy around Valentine's and these sorts of holidays. And I really want to make sure our show bridges that and goes, wait a minute, single, individual, couple, multiple, it really doesn't matter when we talk about this spark that we're going to open up to today. So we're speaking with Amy Culler, exploring how sensuality and sexuality can be a portal to self-discovery, to our evolution. Amy's an intimacy therapy coach. She's worked with thousands of individuals, helping them feel safe, secure, and showing them how to rewire the brain and the body for pleasure and connection. She's an international trainer, a clinical supervisor, TEDx speaker, author, and founder of the Intimacy Institute. She's trained in multiple modalities, including Imago, Gottman, Tantra, sexological body work, as well as couples counseling and erotic intelligence. She uses a solution-based approach informed by nearly 2 decades of research, study, and experience. And hopefully we'll be sharing a whole lot of practical tips with us today, which we always love here on the show. Welcome, Amy.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I want to start with you. I found you on your TED Talk. It was kind of random, and you're so funny and you're so fun. So what led you to specialize, to become an intimacy coach? How did you make that decision?
Ooh,
yeah.
I went looking for the help that I became. I found myself in a sexless marriage where there were sexual health issues. So when I went looking for solutions on how to connect, I went the routes that are normally available. I went to a therapist so we could talk about it, or we went to one of the best erection specialists in the whole world in Beverly Hills, sitting in his office and listening to them talk about hard penises or listening to talk about childhood trauma. Neither one of those were really going to help us learn how to connect. So I lost my family broke up, and I dedicated myself to going, I'm not the only person who needs a solution here, who's looking to increase intimacy when there might be different physical things.
Yeah. And I think the best therapists are people who've gone through something. I find it incredibly difficult, whether I'm a client or as a therapist, but as a client, to work with someone who hasn't experienced some form of what you're sharing. It just makes such a difference. So I'm hearing you say for sure it was your road travel that also then led you to become the therapist you are right now. Correct. What do you love about it? What do you really, really love about doing this work?
Well, I call myself a coach. I'm just letting you know that so that I don't fall under the therapy caption. And what I love about my work is that I have so much experience that I'm able to go in there and see what's holding them up and offer them solutions that help to turn off their brain, which is usually what the problem is, and reframe what connection is, reframe what relationship is, reframe what love is on a term that people can understand.
Let's do that. Let's start with what's the difference between sex and intimacy?
Okay. Well, this is how I describe it. Intimacy is the vibe in the space between you. It's the feeling that you have if you can be playful, or if you can lean into each other or turn toward each other. And sex is the physical expression that mirrors the temperature of that vibe. So if you have a hot vibe, if you have a playful vibe, if you have no vibe at all, If we have no intimacy, it's because you haven't put any vibe and intention into that space between you.
I love that. I heard you use this term, and I've used this term, taking the word and breaking it down, intimacy, in, to, me, see. And so when I say that, to me, what that means is that you're literally, I have to be in touch with what's happening in the present moment, because you can't have sex in the past, and it's hard to have sex in the future. I mean, you can imagine it, but really, if you're not here right now, and seeing first yourself, but also being willing to show that to your partner, it calls for a great degree of courage and to be that naked and authentic. And yet most people struggle with that. They find it challenging. Roles are easier. I just wonder what your thoughts are, having worked with so many people, about this area of being, I call it emotionally naked and intimate.
I believe it takes, and I believe just like anything, it's a skill, and it takes practice. And it's a skill that we can build. And it takes practice to even be naked, quite frankly, for ourselves. And that's hard too. I like to, I like the metaphors. So I equate it to dancing. It's like sex is biological, it's natural. We know how to do it. So is dancing. You hear a rhythm, you start to move, babies start to move just like they play with themselves. And some people are better at it than others. They have more rhythm. They're more free in their bodies. They can, even that person who isn't a good dancer, who can get all over and jump all over, and he's just expressing himself. And you're like, you go, buddy. We appreciate that about people. But then if you wanted to go dance with that person, like even if you're a great dancer, even if two great dancers want to dance with each other, they have to learn a few moves. So if you want to become a dancer and you want to be, I want to be a great dancer, you learn a few moves for yourself. You can practice a few moves in your living room so that you're going, okay, I'm going to go out and I'm going to go in public and I'm going to dance by myself so that you can be more confident with yourself. But if you want to go dance with somebody else and look confident, that takes a few different moves. That takes a little bit of practice. And even great dancers go out and learn a few basic moves together so that they then feel confident and they can make up the dance as they go along. But for a lot of people, if they have a few moves and they know where to start so that they know they're not going to look silly, or they know that whoever's dancing with them is going to be like, ooh, you know a few moves, then they feel more confident to show up for themselves and to show up with somebody else.
So we're starting to move into, you and I have had a conversation off air about, right now I'm just relating to the word moves. A move to me is something that right? You've practiced or you've learned it, and it's like, I know this move. I know, and the same applies in dance, as you were using as a metaphor. I know this step. But when we talk about intimacy, isn't it like a blank slate? Isn't that importance of something emerging out of the present moment that is not predictable at all, that is completely spontaneous in the moment, internally at least, that then results in the expression of a move or a touch or a whatever it is, the expression? Like, how can they be, how are you separating them, or are you? Maybe it's just my ears.
No,
hearing
I am separating them. So thank you. Again, the intimacy is that vibe in the space between. Sex is a decision. Sex doesn't accidentally happen.
So
I'm going to say that.
Being intimate with yourself, you would know your needs, and then you would have whatever this step is as an expression.
So when I say moves,
I
literally mean that transition. That transition that says, oh, I'm going from dancing to myself to now I'm dancing with somebody else. So it's literally a mental transition. It's what's the word? It's a physical shift
Like an inclusion.
Yeah, it's a physical shift where you're going, I choose to be here.
Uh-huh.
So it's that. And when I say a move where you feel confident, I think that when I say a move that makes you know that you feel confident, to me, I'm talking about a move that lets you know that you are showing up. That, remember, you were talking about that I'm here, can't have sex in the past, can't have sex in the present. It's what I work with is exactly that. It's a move that says, oh, I'm here. And it's a move that turns off the brain. So it's like a ritual. Like if you have a repeat ritual that helps to turn off the brain, that lets you know, oh, this is what I'm doing now. Oh, turns on the pleasure. That's why I use that sound that I talked about in my TED Talk. And also in my office, I talk about how I have the same music in my office. I don't have it on now, but I have the same music that I've played for 16, 18 years. Because the minute that music comes on, I'm in it. I hold the space. And so it's like those tiny little cues. So when I say a move, that's, oh, cue that music, because that music lets me know I'm going to that place. I am in that space.
I love that. Okay, that makes sense. Now let's talk about how, because you make it sound very easy. Once you've experienced it, perhaps it gets easier. But there are people who are traumatized. There are people who are so out of touch. And maybe everyone's had moments of going, I just not feeling it, not in the mood, not interested. Or there are people who've given up because they're older and they've decided, oh, well, this is what happens when you get old. We've been together for 20 years. So whatever, letting it go. We're good friends. Whatever reason it is, there's some kind of disconnect between almost like the ability to receive pleasure somehow gets in the way, or it becomes inaccessible if you're still holding on to trauma and past baggage. So from there to there, take it away. What do you do with people? And I'm assuming most people do hold trauma and pain around this area. What do you do with them to help them be able to turn on a pleasure wiring?
I think when I work with people who are in trauma, it helps if I'm discussing the normal person so that they can see that it's not only for trauma. So I'm going to go a little bit deeper. I'm just going to share a quick story about a client. And she said for Valentine's Day, and I'm like, okay, what do you want? Since I'm a coach, I'm like, tell me what you want so I can make sure he wins. That's why I call myself a coach, because I'm totally in your corner to make sure everybody's winning. And she was like, I just want him to hold me and tell me in a way that I can feel it. And I said, when he does hold you and when he does tell you, can you feel it? Can you receive it? So in my understanding of love is that we are all looking for somebody who can receive our love exactly as we want to give it. The issue is that everybody has a hard time receiving love. It takes practice even to love ourselves. It takes practice to like yourself, but to especially to love yourself even when you don't like yourself. I can't believe I did that. I can't believe I did that. That's even the self-love practice. So for that person who's in trauma, this is the way that I describe it. Okay. And this is me in a session talking to a person who has trauma. The heart, the connection that you want, is in the center of your hand. I can tell what ages people have had their trauma at, even if they don't want to tell me. So if it's before a certain age, like super young, they're like, we're good, we're connecting, this is really good. Ooh, we're going to be intimate. Okay. And then as soon as they hit that piece that turns off their brain, they go, whoosh, their brain goes off to the side. Sometimes their body stays and they're not even there. They're having sex, but they're not even there. So sometimes when they're older, they're like, ooh, it's getting intimate. And then they hit that spot and they're going to make it to the heart. They're going to make it to the heart, but whoop, they go right over it and right out the index finger, the middle finger, so on and so forth. The pinky's the oldest. The pinky is like, I was really hurt by the last time you said this. I'm going off of here.
Mm-hmm.
And what I have experienced is that I use the sound, just like you're using, because that's how I know that you're with me, that you understand me. And that's how I know what you're really feeling in your heart, is because I can hear you making those little sounds. So when two people make this agreement to have a ritual and to not talk for a moment, I'm telling them, your partner is going to flying off the handle. You want to keep her in the handle. You need to get here and go, keep her calm, stay in rhythm with her, him, to stay in rhythm together, and then spend a moment in the heart. My practice is about sensuality and about what that means. So I redefine sex, if I may, for just a moment. I'm backing up to talk to even that trauma person. Okay. So the goal of a sexual encounter, the goal of an erotic encounter, is to allow your sensual bodies permission to come out and play. So that's why I even in my TED, I talk about, I'd love to rephrase the word sex, take it from sex to pleasure, because then we'd all want more of it. And when we think of sex, that's why I don't even call myself a sex therapist, because I see so many women, talk about sex like frozen, and men therapy, same response. So I talk about that trauma, and I'm able to explain that if you can stay connected all the way and then get used to the heart, then your physical expression won't break that heart connection. You are staying in the state of connection and pleasure. And when you make an agreement to go there together, and that agreement sounds like, back up 2 steps, back up 2 steps. You heard her stop breathing. You heard her stop. You heard, I'm just using the genders, because so stop up until she's able to go feel. You can feel, this is how you attune to each other. And once you can stay in that attunement of pleasure, then I find that those couples who come to me who are, in their 70s, 80s, 90s, who have decided they don't want to have sex anymore. And I'm like, okay, you don't have to. You don't have to have penetration. George Burns, you're trying to, fight a sword with the rope. Do whatever you want. But when I get them into a cuddle practice, when I get them into a huddle practice where they're humming together, they're agreeing for 5 minutes. That's the whole practice, 5 minutes to make some sound and to turn on some shared sensual pleasure. Sometimes sex is thought of as something somebody takes from you, something you give.
Yeah. And feels like a pressure, or there's a demand, or that judgment you were demonstrating earlier, that voice going, oh, I'm not good enough in this moment, or whatever. Yeah.
Right. And you were talking about the mood. You were talking about the mood, and I want to, this is what I say, because the mood, intimacy is the vibe between two people. And I know Marc slightly well enough, and I know you well enough that I know that if I was in a bad mood, I could show up like this. I'm just in a bad, and Marc and I did actually beforehand. He was like, and I'm like, I feel you, the world. And that's the truth of intimacy, is being able to show up as you are, like you said, as you are. That's why I say free the jiggles and all. I'm a jiggly woman. Intimacy is to be able to be seen exactly you are, even in that angry mood, or in that I'm not in the mood. You're not in the mood for what? So when people say they're not in the mood, and I'm going, not in the mood for what? Sex. You're not in the mood to be poked. And I'll share this with you when men. So what does that mean to you? When you say that to a woman, what does that mean? It means that you want to enter her this second, right? Yes. Okay. That's why she's saying no to you. And that's why a woman is saying, I'm not in the mood, because he's initiating in a way that isn't getting her in any mood.
Or in a same-sex couple, let's do orgasm. It's the same there, right? Whatever that approach to orgasm is,
Yes.
that becomes that sex. Sex equals orgasm, as opposed to what you're describing here, which is not
Right.
that.
And an orgasm is a climax.
Mm-hmm.
A climax of what? A climax of sensual pleasures. That's why I can have an orgasm from cheese. This is so good. That's why I talk about pizza to people who are not in the mood. I'm sorry, I love the metaphors, and food works, because isn't it funny how you can, like, you just ate a meal, but a pizza comes by and you're like, you're always in the mood for pizza.
Well, for you. For me, it'd be something else. And that's also kind of relevant to what we're talking about, because each person might have a different food. One partner wants pizza and the other one wants chocolate.
Right.
Right.
It's and
there
I
has
talk
to be
about
room for both pizza and
I
chocolate.
talk about that. So let's get to that pizza and chocolate thing, shall we?
Well, I had one more question about trauma before we
please.
move into the fun stuff, because I know all of this part's fun.
Yeah.
But back to trauma,
please.
So you're talking about that moment of leaving the body, kind of a threshold of how much a person who is traumatized can receive or experience in the moment before they have a reaction, before their parasympathetic nervous system responds. What do you think about, because we're talking about authenticity, would it not be helpful for that person if they were able to say that's what's happening? In other words, that part of you that is wounded, because it's not all of you. If you were wounded as a child, that child part of you can be accessed and is alive and well in its own misconception of what's really going on. So there's a kind of soothing that you can do. But what do you think about including that part of yourself to soothe it? Because you were talking about your partner soothing you with sound. What do you think about in the name of authenticity, a partner being able to say, wow, I'm scared. All of a sudden I'm scared. And this is clearly my 7-year-old or whatever.
Oh, yeah. That's again why I love for people to be using that sound, because that person, most people who are going, I'm scared, that 7-year-old, we don't have access to that voice. That 7-year-old doesn't have access to go, I'm scared. But that 7-year-old has access to go, because it's our body's natural language to make those words without sound. Wordless communication is how we actually, I'm sharing a bad story. A woman called me and she was like, I'm so angry. No, I had that backwards. She said, I'm so angry. And I went, no, you're not. And she's like, no, I can't believe what he did. I'm so angry. And I'm like, no, you're not. I just talked to a woman who was angry right before you, and she sounded like this. I'm so angry. So when you're describing a feeling, you're no longer in it. And as feelings are energy and motion. Emotions are energy and motion. And if they're flying by and we decide to talk about them, we're going to pull one down like a book. Let's talk about this emotion, and we're going to open it up. We're going to crawl into it. Well, most of them are bad. But if we keep letting them go, the good ones start glowing more. And if we acknowledge the bad ones with a sound, because as I say, so many people don't have access to their emotional language. I work with athletes who will tell me that, I need better emotional intelligence. I'm like, you know what you're feeling. You just don't have a word for it. How do you feel about this? Meh. How do you feel about this?
Yeah.
And that's also allows the person who they're with to have compassion. So this is, people say you can't teach empathy and compassion.
And it keeps you out of the story. I mean, which is not helpful in that moment. But I love what you're saying. I think that's a really valuable tool for people to say, we're going to have wordless communication for this period of time.
And pleasure.
And pleasure. I love
Mhm.
that. So in terms of, let's start moving towards some of the steps to increasing some of the things that you practically exercises or things you might give a couple to try. Let's start with there's no spark. What's a tool? Actually, you could tell them about the candy dish because I thought that was cute. With in your TED talk, you talked about this candy dish
The
and
initiating.
anticipation being part of an erotic fuel. I don't think that's what you called it, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Just something-
Anticipation is the best
Yeah.
aphrodisiac.
That's what you said.
Yeah. And we want to look forward to it. And initiating tends to be a huge thing for a lot of couples. I understand why. I could go through the whole psychological gamut of that. But it's also what I have found out, a lot of the reason why a lot of people end up in sexless relationships is because I'm just using gender norms. Sorry, people, but she will not initiate. And the other person's like, I'm done initiating. I'm done. And I will talk to the person she's going, I guess he doesn't want me anymore. Oh, honey, he just wants you to initiate. I don't initiate. He's the one who initiates. Because that's how they set it up back when they were 17, 18. And I'll explain to her, initiating is like wanting to dance with him. Your dance partners, and he's constantly asking you, but since you never ask him back, he doesn't really think you want to dance with him. He's thinking that you don't like the way he dances, or he wants to go down, you want to dance with somebody else, or that you're just done dancing and now he's stuck. So I help people find ways to initiate. And the one that you're talking about is the candy dish, because it really is sweet. You put out a candy dish. You put candies in the other dish. When one partner wants a little sugar, they put a candy in the dish. And when the other partner agrees, they put in a candy, 2 candies, and you're having a party.
Something's happening.
Uh-huh.
And what if your client says to you, but I never feel like it?
And that's why I talk about, sorry, I'm using my metaphors. I have to. I'm talk about game night, because you want it to happen spontaneously. And that I'm just going to give you my thing. People get into a relationship. They move in together, and they expect intimacy and sex to happen automatically. Okay, sorry. And that would be like a basketball player getting on a basketball team and expecting the practices and the wins and the loving cup to just happen automatically. When they actually have practices to look forward to, but these moves that help them know, remind them that they're safe. And I'm sorry, but this is also why I'm relational. I am very relational. You want that person who knows that when you go, oh, you're learning each other's sounds. Instead of figuring out what somebody likes in bed, you're going to spend the rest of your life learning their sounds, because what they like is going to change. Sometimes you want pizza, sometimes you want chocolate. Now that I've tasted that chocolate, I kind of like it. So when they have a game when they have every Saturday night, Thursday, every Saturday night at 7:00, one of couples, or Saturday night or whatever it is, that's their game night. And during a game night, it's a practice. Every game is a practice game, which means during a practice game, I'm sorry, I love my metaphors, you don't keep score. You're there to practice. You're there to play. You're there to find out in that sensual moment what feels good and what doesn't, so that you can keep growing on that. And like I say, with those basketball players, because they have that practice on Saturdays, when they're at a picnic, it's easier to get a spontaneous game started when you already have a practice. And the other thing is saying is, and this is my magic of my whole contract that I do with, you have your own contract, you have your own contract, and then we have a team contract. Sorry, my metaphors. But is that going back to the receive, we can't give and receive at the same time. And I find that that's why people get stuck in their sex lives, is because they're trying to give and receive at the same time. And I want them to think of it in the long term. You're here for the long haul. You're just getting started. And one session, if you will, I call it a game because it makes it more, I do want people to
More
have
fun.
fun. I want
Yeah.
people to explore. I don't want
Yeah.
it to be taken so seriously. I want you to have a playful vibe.
Yeah.
So if you go in and one time is all about Marc. Hello, Marc. So one time is all about exploring Marc's pleasure and making Marc, oh, I want to find out where those are. Okay, I promise I won't go there again. Maybe, that's how you get to know each other, your partner's sounds. That's what you're going to explore. And then next Saturday at 7:00, that's all me. That is going to be all me. That's where Marc, my partner, I've decided, gets to come in and make it all about me. And that is the practice of receiving. And I find so many people, really easy to say to, gender norms, women like receive. That takes practice. And when that sound, talk about neural, it's the yes sound, it's the okay sound, it's the with a downward inflection, it's the no sound. It says, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, just how helpful that is for anyone who personalizes. These sounds aren't personal. It's not, do you know what I mean? There's something lovely, whereas words could be. If you said it the wrong way, I don't like that. And your partner goes, do you mean you don't like me doing that? Like it becomes a thing.
Oh my God. But
this sound is like it feels like little road marks. Turn here, like you're following a path into the person. It's quite lovely.
It's simple. The GPS system. Yeah, that's what my editor called it, because she edited it, and she and her husband, she was like, "Oh my God, I'm loving this book." Yeah, and they called it a GPS system. It's it's right in the moment, GPS. So especially for trauma, that's why I like it. When that person checks out, they don't have to say anything. You're a lover. You love them. You know when they've checked out. We call it just a timeout. Games have fouls. Fouls happen to everybody. And even if you're not in, you're in a bad mood, two people in a bad mood. Awesome. I see some wrestling coming up. One couple came to me. She contacted me. She's going, it's our night. It's supposed to be our game night, but his father is dying. So I'm just going to skip it. And I'm like, woo, no. That is when you need that, he wants that intimate connection the most. So instead of thinking of it like sex and sexual pleasure, think of it as you are there to show up. This is how you practice showing up for yourself and showing up for your partner, is knowing that you can go, And so hold him. And she called me, of course, the next day to go, I said, let's just go and we'll huddle and we'll talk and we'll just be together. And of course, because that's what men do to turn out of the moment, he wanted to have sex. But to her, it's like, oh, he's in a bad mood. He won't like it. He was in a bad mood. He still wanted to have sex.
So you on your website say that you've simplified the art and science of Tantra. What do you mean by that?
Thank you so much. I'm loving this. Tantra has a lot of confusion around it. And so when I simplify, where I talk about the sound that I make, because it is the sound that comes from your heartstrings. When somebody's with you, you can use it to turn on your engines. But it's got all kinds of things. But once you make that sound with somebody, you're weaving your vulnerable heartstrings. You can hear it coming from their heart, and you're weaving your sounds and your energies together. So Tantra means to weave. And when people think of, Tantra, it has so many elements to it. It's the weaving of your heartstrings, the weaving of your energy, the weaving of being seen, and having sensual pleasure. So this sound. And you can do it if you can even put a little fake smile on your face and make that sound. And you'll notice that your salivary glands begin, your mouth starts to get moist. Because it activates your endocrine system. And your endocrine system is also a part of your sex glands, your hormone glands. So it actually is a sound that turns you on. That's how you can tell when somebody's relaxed, is their mouth is moist. When somebody's dry, you can hear them smacking because they're nervous.
Right.
You do radio, you know. And so when somebody's relaxed, the sound relaxes you. It does, you know, vagus nerve. It activates the vagus nerve and does vagal toning. So where were we? Oh, the Tantra. So when two people are doing it together, when you do it together, when you do the sound with somebody, your heartbeats, brain waves, and respiratory systems start to synchronize. You are literally weaving your biological magnetic systems. To me, that is Tantra.
That's beautiful. I love that. Has anyone approached this scientifically in terms of getting data on it and measuring these things? I know you have a bit of background in Gottman, who were really big on research and these kinds of things. Has anyone done this in this arena?
I've done it with my own research, with my own money, with stuff on my head, in MRI machines, in place. I've done it with couples where I can see that they match. I don't have the clinical study behind me. I don't have my own studies. I look forward to getting there. I know it's not far behind, but there is tons of research, and it's that things like when couples sleep together, these systems synchronize. I believe that that's why when couples are in static, they're not harmonizing their systems. They don't want to go to sleep together.
Right. That's so great. I
Mm-hmm.
remember being, this is so off. Well, it's not off, but it's just
Sure.
personal. I just remember being in a relationship where we would negotiate how much time he needed away before he could come back. And we had different abilities to handle that space in the middle of a conflict, right? Different desires. He wanted days. And I'm like, days? How about an hour? How about we go, meditate, have a shower, do whatever, and then come back and clear it. So it's really interesting when you talk about synchronizing and it being a demonstration of how in harmony you are. You can't exclude what's happening in your relationship from this moment, right? And so I'm hearing you say that when you actually work directly with these exercises that weave the heart, the brain, the body, the breath, that you are harmonizing.
You're harmonizing.
And that's so different than the pressure of, okay, we have to have sex tonight. We haven't had sex for over a month and this marriage is going, or this relationship is going down the tubes, all that pressure. This is like, okay, let's learn to harmonize. How are we going to do this? It's very gentle.
If you come back to my original, when you asked me why I did this, and I shared that I was in a sexless relationship I love my former husband. The forward in my book is from my former husband.
Nice.
And he had prostate cancer and erectile challenges before I even married him. And so all of my stuff is about that is not about the penetration, although I help a lot of people with that. I just feel like sharing this piece. I help a lot of people even with the trauma that they've had from being influenced by porn, because I wrote about down, because I forgot to mention that when we were talking about trauma. Watching porn is a trauma. I have nothing against porn. I have no judgments whatsoever. But because I've dealt with so many people in their authenticity issues with porn, because and I've done research on what happens when people come from abusive families. So people who've seen sexual violence have CPTSD, complex post-traumatic stress disorder. just from viewing it, being in the parameter of viewing sexual violence. So imagine what it's like to just have those images streamed into your brain is causing a trauma. And a trauma is a reset, something that's causing an issue. It's created you have a trauma. It's a break.
Mhm.
So the break is that the brain, the eyes, optic nerve are an external piece of your brain. So you're literally your brain, direct brain, no other sensory receptors involved in this one. Your brain is having a reaction to violence. Ooh. So your the orgasm, or not an orgasm, if you will, I call it a braingasm, and it's an ejaculation that comes from an intense trauma, quite frankly.
Listening to you, I wonder about sound, because you said it's visual, but there's also that sound that can activate trauma if you the sound of what's the word, mastication. But there's people who hear that sound and go absolutely ballistic and don't understand it, but it's connected with trauma in childhood.
Right. And what would soothe that person from hearing that sound or from having that picture is the sound.
Lovely.
You cannot.
Lovely. Yeah.
I
love that. That's fantastic. I know we don't have too much time left, but you talked about 3 keys to a safe container, and I'd love it if you went over those: presence, curiosity, and connection. Can we go over them and maybe a couple of hints of what could support people in those 3 areas? And please, let's include the singles, because as you were speaking, even with maybe let's start there for the singles. There's no reason in the world you can't be making that sound with yourself, relating to it yourself, discovering yourself what is pleasurable, correct?
Hi, I'm single. And but if you think about some single women at my age, you'd be like, that there's that dowdiness. I hate that dowdy sense. Well, to be alive is to be in touch with your sensual pleasures. So for that single person, I'd ask them to surround themselves with things that give them sensual pleasure. The music that's coming through the radio or the TV, is it obstruction? Is the shirt that you're wearing, does it feel soft? Is this the right temperature? Those little things where you begin to go, my daughter, my friends are like, God, you're noisy. I am, because when I see something, I'm like, ooh, look, I love that. It's letting that sensuality come out. That's why that when your mouth is salivating and when you're in love, everything looks brighter, everything sounds wonderful, because you have your sensual is turned on. And that's how you turn on your sensual, is by it's intentional to go,
Love it. I want everyone to have a Valentines and just go, what would turn me on any level?
Yeah. So if you're single for Valentine's Day, literally look forward to that day, because there's love in the air. So that's the thing, is there's hearts, there's love in the air. Soak it up instead of looking at what you don't have, just like life. Look at the love you do have. And as I said, we all are looking for somebody to give our love to. The problem is we all need practice receiving it. So if you look forward to Valentine's Day and know that you're going to give to yourself, and you're going to receive it. And I tell people to do that out loud. I say that takes practice. So it's literally like, ooh, I want coffee. Get yourself something to drink. That's good. Next time I want it hotter. I like it hotter. Get yourself some chocolate. Next time say, ooh, next time I'm just going to get the chocolates. Practice asking yourself for what you want.
I remember being called high maintenance, and I think I said, I'm not high maintenance. You're just not in touch with your desires. Like,
oh, Yeah. Yeah, that's funny. You're not used to somebody saying what they want and need. That's probably true.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I think our society's a bit adverse to women doing that. With men, it seems to be a turn on. Oh, he's assertive. But with women, you get the high maintenance. And it's like, why is that? That's a bit odd. Do you know? Why is it threatening a woman who knows what she wants and asks for it? Why is that threatening? Or
As a
person,
man,
let's
if I
say,
may just throw
sure.
something in there, I think it's context, right? High maintenance in one area can not necessarily mean that in another. Because I think, if it's about wanting and needing, stuff done and things all the time, like it's like it never ends, is one thing, being high maintenance. And then asking for what you want, to me, is a difference. There's a big difference of just wanting stuff, and done for you, than expressing your desires and what you need. I think there is a difference.
Yeah, the difference is that the other person thinks they're responsible to give it to you. That's what needs to be dismantled. No one else has any responsibility to give you what you need or want, but you need to know what it is, or how will you ever have it for your, for yourself.
Completely agree.
In my experience from talking to a lot of people, and I even say this in my stuff, is that for a lot of guys, she'll go, I want this. He does not know how to do it. Or she thinks, oh my God, I can't do that. I'm going to feel ridiculous if you want me to spank you, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And that's where we talk about the next one, curiosity. Instead of just going, I don't know how to do that. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to spank you. And I just say it because it's such an easy one to say, where it's like, be curious. Be curious. See what it's like. Call somebody and say, how do I do it? I'll put out a video. Call me for free. I help people do this stuff all the time. And be curious about what it's like to be spanked. Be curious. So what if they call out daddy or mama? What would that be like? Okay, yeah, don't do that again. You never know, but stay curious.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And
curious.
So these were your three keys that we're sort of diving into. So one is curiosity. We got that. No matter how odd it sounds, give it a shot.
That's why you're taking different turns too.
Right. Then you can debrief later.
Right.
All right. And presence. I loved in your talk, you said, if you need lube, it's not foreplay. And I went, that is so clear. Like, that's really nice and clear. I love that. That would take the heat off lots of dynamics where the guy goes, you need more foreplay. What's that? Like, how do I do that? Or I can't do that, or I'm not doing it well enough, or,
foreplay. I just real quick explanation. Foreplay to a guy. He has a light switch. His light switch goes on. He's like, I'm on. Foreplay to a woman is she has a light switch in every room in her house, the kitchen, the bedroom, the office. You got to go through every room and turn on her lights. How do you turn on her lights? The more light switches she has on, the more you need to get her to go, turns off this one. Oh, it came back on. Start all over. Do it, dude. The more you do it, the faster that person will get there. Do it together. That's how you drop the outside world. That's why I call it a huddle, is because that's what competitive people do to remind themselves that they're on the same team.
And go ahead.
No, that we're here, that I've got your back.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I really want to make sure that we get out of gender here, because gender fluidity is become, we're as a society more and more opening to the idea of masculine and feminine being in everyone. And so identification becomes less important. I think the more conscious you get, the less important it is to feel separate from another gender. Yeah. And so in this case,
polarities.
It's polarity, and you can play with that. So do you also, would you advocate for couples to play with masculine and feminine, no matter what gender?
I don't call it masculine and feminine. I call it the giving and the receiving, and that end of it, because that's really what that is. And sometimes, even ageism, sometimes you want to feel like that child. Sometimes you want to feel like the grown up empowered. That's play with the power, the top, the bottom, the gender, that play with the polarity. That's where the sexiness is. That's where you're learning to stretch in for yourself.
And then your last key, connection. All of this obviously results in connection, but maybe you can touch on it a little bit. What do you see as connection, and what's your favorite tool for creating it?
My favorite tool for connection is that sound. I call it the huddle, because that's exactly what you're doing. So when people do a huddle together, they're being vulnerable together. It's a weird action that's also emotional, because we've shared how you can use it to express your emotions. It's an action and it's emotion. It's not sex and it's not talking. It's an agreement to meet in that place where we just feel each other, even if we're feeling different things.
So would you do it at the same time, or take turns? Is it a breath piece where you're going back and forth, or how are you, what's the position, the best position to be in to have this? I'm assuming you're eye gazing, you're looking in each other's eyes, and then.
You know what? I don't even make my people eye gaze,
No?
because I find sometimes that in itself starts to be something else. It starts to be too much pressure. You can't feel it because this sense is taken over. For that couple who's just starting it, I love playfulness. So I'll get them to stand back to back. I'd have them stand back to back. And stand back to back, put your backs against each other, because now you're in a new awkward position that lets you know you're not about to have sex, but you're in physical contact and you can feel each other's emotions.
Cool.
And I'd have them go, And before you know it, they will synchronize. And if spontaneous synchronization is a scientific term that happens from an audience clapping together, they will have spontaneous synchronization. And if they don't, they're still going to feel each other.
I love that.
So start your Valentines that way. That's what I mean by a move that says we're in this together and we're in it for the pleasure.
Okay, so we only have a couple of minutes. I want to give you an opportunity to tell our listeners where they can find you and about your book is it released? Has it been?
It's released. It's on Amazon, and it's called The Huddle: How to Score in Sex and Love. And it's written with the playfulness in mind. And I say it's written with the guys in mind because most of my clients over the years have been guys from all over the world who wouldn't have normally seen a sex therapist. So I spoke in their language. And I am available. You can book consultations on my site, amykeller.com. And I ask people to subscribe to my YouTube channel, where I'm answering questions and giving advice and putting up some classes really soon that you can even access through YouTube, because I want everybody to feel the love vibe and to feel confident and have more sensual pleasure instead of just trying to get in their scores.
Love it. Okay, so we're going to close. Everybody have a wonderful Valentine's Day. And how about we all close with the sound together? Can we do that? On 3. Awesome. Yeah, it does make you feel kind of giddy and like, right? Okay. Thanks, Amy. It's been a pleasure. Loved having you.
Tasha.
Thanks everyone for joining us. The show again, Wednesdays, 6 to 7 p.m., 100.5 FM in Vancouver, also on our YouTube channel, Facebook Live, and available as podcast, www.consciouslivingradio.org.